Hi, I'm Megan Lester, and I'm a little late, so I'm going to cut to the chase. I focus on Appalachia as a culture, instead of like a geographical location or traditions or something like that. I focused on it as a culture because being from Appalachia, obviously, hopefully you can tell with the thick accent, it's near and dear to me actually. So I'm going to start out my paper by reading my introduction. When one thinks of Appalachia, the images of fields of farms, log or down-ridden homes, bountiful mountains, banjo music, and thick accented people typically come to mind. The stereotypical Appalachian paints a picture of a melancholy but downtrodden person whom lives off the land and is disconnected from modern society. Appalachia is significantly different from its traditional views, although it does hold true to some aspects. One can look at the word Appalachia and view it in multiple different ways, geographically, culturally, as a place created in literature, or just as a stereotype. Even though the geographical and stereotypical views of Appalachia are entirely different, the cultural view of Appalachia is collectively agreed upon. All these terms describe Appalachia in some way or another, but I believe the best way to describe Appalachia is as a culture. And first I focused on the geographical area of Appalachia. Obviously, in the first module, we learned that the actual region of Appalachia falls along the Appalachian mountain range along the east coast, and it extends from the lower part of New York through most of Pennsylvania, all of West Virginia, the southwest part of Virginia and North Carolina, and the eastern parts of Kentucky and Tennessee, small parts of South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. By definition, all those locations are Appalachia. But when one thinks of Appalachia, they typically do not relate Pennsylvanians to people from West Virginia or the people of Kentucky. And this is due to the stereotype that surrounds Appalachia and the picture it paints in people's minds of what it should be. And it goes hand in hand, I believe, with the picture that literature paints of it. Many people believe that Appalachia should have certain characteristics or be confined to a specific region because they have read it that way in books or watched TVs or movies, and it's give it certain attributes. A lot of these stereotypes say that Appalachia is isolated from the rest of society. I quoted a quote from Gary Foster here. It says, "Indeed, both the proponents of the romantic view and the pathological view cite isolationism as either the preservative of that which is considered colorful and quaint, or much the cause of the problems accredited to Appalachia." So, does literature create this stereotype, or is literature based on this stereotype? Either way, the two play into each other. Yes, literature paints Appalachia as having many of the stereotypical aspects, thick accents, rundown homes, poverty, agricultural. I quoted a poem, By Definition, by Betty James. It says, "Appalachian is a man who can take a good car, used maybe but serviceable, and run it hard as hell over rough roads and let it go all to pieces inside a litter of thrown beer cans and cigarette butts." Hold on, baby's crying. And sometimes, despite the many negative attributes, Appalachia is also painted as having many charming characteristics. I read somewhere that a lot of people are drawn to Appalachian literature because of the picture it paints of mountains and streams and quaint scenery and all this stuff. But consider Jim Wayne Miller's poem, "The Briar Losing Touch with His Traditions," and what it says about the stereotypes. He used his traditional ways to make furniture and drew business. However, as he stepped away from the traditional and the stereotypical, he started losing business. So to me, that says that it doesn't matter where you're from. Say like New York, Pennsylvania, you're supposed to have this persona about you when you're from Appalachia. But with the literary and stereotypical view and the geographical definition of Appalachia, what exactly is it? And more than anything, I believe it's a culture. It's the way of life of the people that live there. And I also believe it is a culture specific to each person and each person's family. To each their own. To one, the most notable aspect of Appalachia might be poverty, and then to another it might be the feeling of fullness or the sense of place one gets from working in a garden, growing their own food, providing for their own family, a lot of the stuff that does happen in Appalachia. And to another, it just might be the picture that literature paints, the quaint feeling of warm breezes flowing through luscious green trees while birds are chirping, stuff that they can't get in the city. But whatever it is that makes Appalachia a culture specific to one person, is that the definition that makes it so unique, it's so unified. Consider the way Appalachia is specific to the family in River of Earth. They know poverty and hunger, going from town to town following the work provided by the coal mines. The culture they knew was a hard one, and their life and their culture in Appalachia was ruled by hunger and poverty and the coal mining industry. And let's look at the Shepherd's family in Saving Grace. Their family was ruled by the culture in Appalachia that focuses on religion and eccentric religion. They were impoverished and hungry as well, but mostly they were governed by their eccentric views that people held in Appalachia at that time, the religious views. But the mother in Saving Grace, she wanted that picturesque version of Appalachia. She wanted to live off the land and stay where they buried the baby and, have that picture perfect Appalachia. Although their Appalachian culture shared many characteristics with the people in River of Earth, they were centered on religion. But does it have unified characteristics? And yes, I believe that there are some stereotypical or unified characteristics of Appalachia that play into the stereotype or the culture of it. I'm having a hard time determining whether culture and stereotype are into one another or they're separate. One of the characteristics is a deep religious root. Although in today's time there are many different religious views, some of those different views have made their way into the newer generations of people living in Appalachia. But the ancestors that make up the population and that have been here for quite some time, for the most part, have that traditional belief in God, Jesus, and the Bible. And second, the aspect of poverty among Appalachia is true. I'm from there, I know. These towns are still largely based around coal mining industry, and it is that alone that keeps them thriving. If not coal mining, then it is other manual jobs such as log mills and agricultures. Around here there's not a lot of population, so there's not a lot of job opportunities and no incentives for people to come in here and provide jobs for these people. So a lot of these families are just staying in poverty. Many of the true Appalachian culture towns are not highly populated. And they often rely on government assistance, and that could be what paints a bad picture of Appalachia. Lastly, the idea of Appalachia being rich in tradition is true. Many families in Appalachia still rely on home remedies, old wives' tales, and traditional ways that they live. For example, I put old wives' tales such as putting an onion slice in your sock overnight will help rid your body of arthritis, and that's still practiced by many people. My grandma still does that. Whatever the tradition may be, it is still held because most Appalachians are rich in heritage and carry on these traditions from generation to generation. And sometimes it appears that Appalachia is different from the rest of America. Once I heard it described as a place stuck in time, and I believe that's one of the best descriptions. When they think of America, they think of a land with diverse cultures, ethnicities, and opportunities, the land where everybody wants to immigrate to. The first thought is not of the predominantly Caucasian, heavily religious, and rural Appalachia. Where the rest of America sees a great influx of opportunity, employment, and recreation, Appalachia is still on the back burners of all that, being small and without many modern-day luxuries and services most of America has. An article reiterates the changes that Appalachia does not have in relation to the rest of America by Anne Shelby. If the views of Appalachia over several decades represent dramatic changes in a region usually thought of as impervious to change, they also represent shifts in perception that have at least as much to do with America's alternative views of itself as they have to do with the changes in the upland sections of several southern states. And I don't believe that it's that Appalachian America have a strained relationship, but as though they operate separately. Appalachia is a part of America, obviously, but it seems as though that traditional Appalachia, that cultural Appalachia, it operates by itself. It lives by itself. It's stuck in time. What is Appalachia's relationship to the South? When one thinks of the South, they automatically think of Appalachia as being part of it. However, when it comes to the geographical definition, it's not true. The South does not consist of the states of New York, Pennsylvania, etc. This idea only reiterates my thesis, in my opinion, that Appalachia is not just a definition based on geography and the location of the mountain range. It's more than the stories, more than the locations, and more than the stereotypes that fall around it. Although I realize that my paper is reiterating that the stereotypes and the traditions is what makes Appalachia a culture. Appalachia cannot be specified to one or two things, in my opinion, based on some criteria. Those of New York that are considered Appalachia do not relate to those that are in the Appalachia, Mississippi. And James Steele described it best in his piece, Appalachia. I quoted the whole thing, but I won't read it to you. So my thesis is that Appalachia is more than its location. It's more than the stereotypes that fall around it. And I believe the stereotypes in the literature have created each other and they continue to play into each other. I think that a true Appalachia and a true Appalachian are people that are rich in heritage and they have these traditions that have gone on for many, many years. And they're just kind of a stuck people, and I feel the same way. But I just really can't give a good definition to what Appalachia really means unless you live there. And some of my classmates very well may, but I live in Grundy, Virginia. I'm right on the borderline of Kentucky, West Virginia, right near Tennessee, right there in the heart of Appalachia. And to me, I see it every day, so it's easy for me to feel as though it's a culture, and it's kind of hard for me to portray it to you by speaking to my class and then by writing a paper to my professor. But I appreciate the time that you all took to listen to me, and hopefully I made a little bit of a sense. Obviously the baby has took my attention a little bit, but thank you very much, and I've enjoyed the class.